morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to Red Hot Talk once again. And Rod is back.
Yes. I'm just reading our first comment.
Yes, looking forward to what Jimmy and Rob may or may not know. Okay, well, tell us what you know and that we don't know.
Well, if I tell you what I don't know, we'll be here all week. So we'll stick to what we know.
Right, okay, so it's going to be a general chat today. We're going to round up some of the latest news, rumors, and there are some updates that Rod and I would probably talk a little bit about. Yeah, you guys just have fun. I think nothing too technical this week, unless you really want to, and or you can share any other comments that you may want to share after we talk a little bit about the news and rumors and see what you guys like or not like about this stuff. So, Rod, welcome back. And how was your week off?
It wasn't exactly a week off. It was a week of controlled crisis, like we all get from time to time. So it's one of those. But I've come out the other side, so things are okay. Things are okay again. Yeah.
Okay, and I noticed your eyes actually gone a lot better.
That's right. Yeah. My eye. It's It looks terribly frightening, but it's utterly painless. So I'm a bit prone to burst blood vessels for no obvious reason. So it looks like for a couple of weeks I'm some kind of vampire, but it's gone away again now. It's gone away again.
Yeah. And hello, Carl, and welcome back. So let's start with some news, shall we? And there are some news happening around in the last month or two, and obviously it's all surrounding a lot of updates, actually, kind of. But one of the news that caught my eyes was from Canon. It's actually more like a rumor, to be honest, and is that they have filed a patent about a device that looks awfully similar to the DJI Pocket 3.
Oh, really?
How
interesting.
So the reason is, I think they may have seen something or seen the demand for it, and also because now if you look at the blogger space in the camera industry wise, they are lagging behind the Sony. Sony's ZV series has done quite well, for the content creator side of it. And a lot of content creators are definitely using Sony cameras more than Canon. Canon are being used by a lot of pros, and which is kind of their main market anyway. But their own products that is supposed to be focusing on the creator market doesn't seem to do too well, but comparatively. And I guess that they're now seeing, this sort of all-in-one solution from DJI may be a solution. And at the moment, DJI Pocket 3 is selling like hotcakes, and everyone that I spoke to, in fact, some of my friends even asked me, I want to get the same thing because it looks so cool. If I go travel, I don't have to take out my iPhone or things like that. Everything can be just in a tiny unit. You flip out the screen, it start recording and think. It's a simple thing to use. And in terms of for even a beginner, and then they will find that this is a very useful device. So I guess this is something that Canon is catching on now. It's like, okay, this might mean something. So what do you think about that?
I think DJI's been doing this a very long time.
Yeah.
Canon hasn't done this at all. I'd be quite surprised if this does happen and Canon comes up with a product that is on the same level as the Pocket 3. It might surprise me, but I don't recall Canon having any history with gimbal stabilization.
No.
Or also perhaps DJI's kind of gyro software type stabilization, which I imagine works in parallel on the Pocket 3. I still don't know how DJI has managed to get a 1-inch sensor into the Pocket 3. So I can't, if it does happen, I can't see it being on the same level myself. But who knows?
But you know that Canon has released a couple of these really quirky, supposedly vlogger cameras.
but no stabilization as far as I'm aware. Which one was that? I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, I mean, I just find it really surprising. This is not isolated case for Canon as well. You know, like you see the likes of Sony, Panasonic have these so-called vlogger cameras without stabilization, which is kind of beyond my
Yeah.
imagination.
PowerShot V10.
Yep.
I couldn't wait for my memory to deliver the name, so I've looked it up. PowerShot V10. It's a very attractive, quirky looking thing. That's
Yep.
quite a handy little product to use, but it's not the sort of camera. It's not a Pocket 3. It just doesn't work in the same way. It's the sort of camera you perhaps put down and talk
Yep.
to.
Yeah.
You know, if you're doing that kind of vlogging, it's not the kind of run and gun style that Pocket 3
No.
does. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what Canon does. But we've been talking for a long time as well about Canon doing a retro cam, haven't we? And that's not happened. So
we have. But
so
only time.
sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
I've,
That's okay.
2 minutes. I've just gone onto the phone. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So what do you guys think about this particular news/rumor there about Canon potentially releasing a DJI Pocket 3 rival product that has basically a all-in-one unit, has a relatively large sensor camera that can do stills and videos together with a mechanical gimbal and a relatively big screen, touchscreen interface, so you can control the cameras and view the images as well. So if they do come up with a solution like that, if the performance, you know, kind of more or less same as the DJI, which one would you go for? Okay, roll this back.
Sorry about that.
Okay, that's fine.
More
So
crisis and complication. Yeah.
I was just asking the audience, you know, like let's
Yes.
say for argument's sake, hypothetically speaking, if Canon does produce such a product that can rival DJI's Pocket 3, has, let's say, similar sort of quality, similar sort of performance, similar sort of specs, I was just asking about the audience here. Would you trust Canon or DJI? That's going to be a very tricky thing, right? You know, like Canon is a big camera brand with, like, you know, unrivaled image quality in terms of color space, color signs, and generally historically the AFs is really, really good. The dual pixels are really good. And DJI is no slouch. You know, they have perfected small sensor AF, you know, since the drone days, and the gimbal is virtually second to none. You know, they've been doing it for years. So it's going to be an interesting choice if they do come up with a product like that. And it would be very hard for consumer like myself to choose which one, you know, to go for.
Well, thing is, the way I say it, if they do one that's as good, why do we need two? So going to your question, would you rather buy a product that's on its third iteration or one that's on its first? And I think we probably know what we'd do. But DJI's got so much experience with this stuff, like with the subject tracking. It knows how to work a gimbal to follow a subject. That's not the same as subject tracking autofocus, is it? Because you're directing a gimbal. You're not just directing focus points. It's whole new areas of technology, which is why I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, well, let's put it aside then in that case. But it's certainly a very interesting thing, and especially there isn't a product out there on the market at the moment that can rival Pocket 3. You know, there isn't.
I think I'd turn the question around and say, if Canon wanted to beat the Pocket 3, what would it have to do?
Full frame.
Full frame gimbal camera. Yeah, right.
Well, you know what? If they have a full frame camera and or maybe even Micro Four Thirds sensor base, you know, have about 3 times the size of the Pocket 3, giving you similar sort of functionality, but give you vastly improved image quality, and especially in low light, I think that could be a very different product, yet interesting.
It could be. I just don't think you'll get the mobility or the lightness or the operability with anything larger than a 1-inch sensor.
Yep.
Canon does have some history with 1-inch sensors, as we know from its power shots.
Yep.
It doesn't have an interchangeable lens 1-inch camera, but maybe, you know, perhaps Canon should go back to Sony and say, look, sorry we laughed about the Nikon 1. Can we borrow some of your stuff, please?
and then they will probably say, yeah, we got some old stock lying around. You can have some.
But yeah, that could be a thing. But you know, all this adds weight, and the reason why the Pocket 3 is what it is because it's pared down to the bone, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you can stick on conversion
I
lenses, I know, but
I guess you're right there. DJI is, this is the third generation of pocket cameras from DJI. And they have gone so far to the point that now they have integrated the audio products. Their mic connects to it directly, there's so many integrations there. The ecosystem is already built up, and they can only add more to it. While if Canon have to enter this space, they have to be very innovative. They have to be very, very good at whatever they wanted to achieve. Beat DJI in terms of image quality, which I don't doubt that. But however, like you said, they're not experiencing gimbal. They're not experiencing the integrated, like you said, the subject tracking side of it. They're not used to this sort of thing.
Yeah. No.
And they don't have any audio products, so that's the problem as well. So they want to have something that kind of equate to what Pocket 3 can do at this moment in time. They can't.
That's a good point about the audio products. I mean, what do you think though about DJI's bespoke audio solutions? DJI's very careful to make sure you can't use any other microphones than theirs, unless that's changed.
Yeah. But it's going to be really hard. I'm not entirely sure. I think DJI is going to continue to stick with their own, bespoke system.
Yeah.
They're not going to allow third party.
They're not massively expensive. It's just a bit irritating if you've already got audio gear for your other cameras.
Yep. So Canon can go another route. If they don't want to have the bespoke audio system and open up the Bluetooth point or the Wi-Fi point and just basically use the wireless system, they allow third-party Bluetooth connections. But I always find that Bluetooth audio is not the same, and I always find that the any sort of Bluetooth mic that I've used before, the sound quality is always a little bit less than the full-blown 2.4 gigahertz wireless mic system.
They're not common Bluetooth mics, and I think they're probably not common for that reason. I mean, everyone who makes wireless mics goes for radio transmission, so I don't know. It could just be one of those rumors. We'll see. I mean, I think it's difficult, isn't it? If somebody said to you, "I want a Canon camera to get into vlogging," I'd find it very hard to tell them what to get. Because I've got my own idea of what you would need. And it would generally, I think I'd generally say interchangeable lenses are better, or at least a very, very wide standard lens. But you really need proper stabilization, don't you? Because anyone moving up from a phone is going to be horrified at the lack of stability in most mirrorless cameras.
Absolutely. And Chuck just said a Canon can have the US market and DJI get banned.
It could. Well, it might just be the drones. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Well, we will see whoever win the election first. And we go it might all change by then. You'll see.
It might.
It might. But yeah, you're quite right there. But I think you raised a very good point there. Even for myself these days, I often carry the Pocket 3 out and just have my whatever camera that I want to take photos of with me. So in the past, I always think about carrying a hybrid camera and then just basically do 2-in-1. I can film myself, do photography, everything with one camera. Then I found that it actually wasn't a good solution, and I'll tell you why. Let's say if you want to be a solo creator, you want to go to a location, you want to film yourself doing something. And if you only have one camera doing both things, that means you can't film yourself using the camera. you can
I've
have
been
loads
there.
Yeah, you can have loads of B-rolls, but you don't have anything with you using the gear. So that's the problem, and that means you have to carry two cameras, even though that you might think, oh, I have a hybrid camera that can do both. But in reality, you can't use it for both because it doesn't work like that.
If your camera's the subject. You need another camera.
So then,
I've been in that position.
So I end up carrying two cameras and multiple lenses to do different things, and the bag gets heavy. Even with Micro Four Thirds, it's still having two sets of cameras and lenses is not a great thing to have. So these days, I seem to just basically chuck the Pocket 3 in my pocket in the bag, which is tiny. and the mic is, like you said, integrated. All I have is just the little mic, the little camera, a
So
couple of
what do you
batteries.
use a radio mic and a lavalier mic,
Yeah,
or just
yeah.
a transmitter? Pin the transmitter to your
I just a
pocket.
transmitter and just in my pocket, and then and that's it.
Yeah, and this is the thing. If you look at all the things you might want to video, if you're on a trip abroad, maybe with your family, you're just having to walk around in the evening, you want to do a bit of filming in
Yeah,
a busy market just to get the atmosphere. Are you going to try and do that with a mirrorless camera, or are you going to use a Pocket 3? I mean, it seems to me the answer is pretty simple. So
yeah,
I think as well that a Pocket 3 is better at good quality video
yeah,
than a mirrorless camera is at that kind of style of shooting.
yeah. Absolutely.
So yeah,
I think that based on this year's alone, all the travel I've done and the amount of time I use the Pocket 3, the more I realize that, yeah, I could have whatever cameras I want to take photos with, and I just have whatever, just pick up the camera that I enjoy to use, and I have the Pocket 3 to film myself using it.
and how fast do you need to be ready when you're filming? I mean, there's some kinds of filming you can do where you've got time to think about it, to set it up, get everything in place, get everything
Yeah.
rigged up and on the
Well,
tripod. But there's other filming where you only need to do it 5 seconds before you need to start.
and absolutely, for a lot of things that I do these days, it seems to be quite spontaneous, and that means whenever I
Yeah,
see
yeah,
something, I just pick up a Pocket 3, flip the screen, like I said, 2 seconds, the camera's on, and then
yeah.
the mic's already automatically connected, and I press record, and there you go. It's just straight away.
And you haven't got about 1,000
No.
codecs to think through. You just got your favorite frame rate, your favorite
Yep.
resolution. You just press a button.
Yep. And I do
So
think that it's the Pocket 3 is brilliant for that, especially for
yeah,
solo content creator who doesn't have a film crew around you. That you still, while you still want to record yourself using whatever the gear that you have and things like that, or just your activities in general. You want to showcase
yeah.
a place that you take photo of, having you actually using the camera. The Pocket 3 is brilliant for that. And that raises another question actually to everybody
Okay.
who might be listening right
Yep.
now. If Pocket 3 is so good, or if the category or product like the Pocket 3 exists now, will that change the space of so-called the hybrid market? Because so far we've been talking about these hybrid cameras like G9 Mark II, the all these supposedly a good even full frame hybrid cameras, the APC hybrid cameras like the XT5, the Z60, Z6 III, and all the others are supposed to be good on both video and stills. In reality, like what the scenario that I just talked about, most people are operating solo. They don't have a film
Yeah.
crew around you, and that means that
No.
in on paper, these products seems great. Oh yeah, you can shoot really great videos. Has all these different codecs. You can shoot lock profile. You can have high speed frame rate and things like that. Blah 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 blah. You can ram on it all day long. But when it comes to actually using and start filming yourself, you realize, okay, yeah, I actually do need two cameras if I want to do things that I want to do. And this hybrid camera doesn't seem to make sense anymore because in that case, I might as well get a video camera and a very good still camera and still do what I love.
I honestly do think that is true. I think that even the best hybrid cameras, I'm talking mirrorless here,
yeah,
and perhaps some higher end compacts, they are not good enough at half the things that vloggers want to do. They're no good for this kind of run and gun immersive video. I don't think they ever will be. They're very intrusive.
yeah,
If
definitely.
even if the stabilization is good, and you're trying to film inconspicuously or politely or quickly in a busy place, a mirrorless camera or a hybrid camera is a pretty obtrusive thing, whereas a Pocket 3 hardly even know you've got it. So I think it's a less intrusive way of filming. It depends on what you're filming, but I think the
Yeah,
video market now is so broad that hybrid cameras only cover part of it. Cinema
yeah,
cameras only cover a part of it. And at the different end of the scale, you need phones and you need action cameras and you need gimbal cameras like the Pocket 3. And you won't get a hybrid camera to do what the Pocket 3 can do. And I'd like to see what Canon comes up with if that happens. I think the competition is more likely to come from GoPro. Maybe GoPro will
Yeah.
make a gimbal camera.
I very doubtful. They already
Yeah, yeah.
They already failed spectacularly with the drone, and
Oh,
I
what's the
think
GoPro drone?
yeah, and I
What
think
was that?
they have burned their fingers so badly, and I don't think they're gonna do that again. And
What was the GoPro drone? Did I miss that?
it was 6 years ago, 5 years.
Oh, was it? Right, right.
They were trying to obviously rival DJI at that time, you know,
Yeah,
because they see DJI is up and coming, you know, they're entering the action market with the
yeah,
Osmo Action, so they know the
yeah.
competition heating up, so they needed to maybe hoping to equalize the space a little bit. Okay, you guys do action camera, let me do the drone, and then it didn't do well at all.
Right, right. I think
Yeah,
it's as well that we're soon going to be running out of places where we're allowed to fly a drone. So,
yeah,
so
and I had to,
maybe we
yeah.
just need a camera on a very long stick.
Well, I have to. Well, speaking of stick, you got the Insta360 that can do that, right? And
I know, yeah, that's right, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I've got the. I don't know if you've used it, Jim. I've got the 3 meter stick for
yeah, oh yeah,
the 360 camera, and you know that monopods sometimes get a bit of
yeah,
flex.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
nothing to this stick. I mean, it's like, oh,
It
trying to control it.
reminds me one of those, you know, this window cleaner trying to clean the a window 3 story high with a little stick trying to poke it up.
uh, but what I you can do with that kind of thing is when you've got one of these really long sticks and a 360
Yeah,
camera,
yeah,
you can do these really cinematic things. You can go from ground level
yeah,
and
yeah,
you can just go up through the trees and you know, as long as they're not tall trees, above the tree line for kind of
yeah,
what looks like an aerial shot. So
yeah.
it's quite cool. But
Paul will just
yeah,
say, "Where's Rod's
where's my
cat?"
cat? What cat? Do I? I can
Maybe because I
I
got
can
Olympus
get it.
cat right here.
I can get a cat, Paul, if you like. But I
uh,
haven't got. Oh, I have got. I've got an Olympus beanie, but
ah,
I think it's in the garage.
I had an OM System beanie somewhere. I don't know where it is now. I'm going vintage today.
I can go get a hat, Paul, if you like, but it wouldn't be in the same kind of genre. It'd be like a Homburg, which might look a bit weird in the current context.
Yeah, but that's it's interesting, right? I mean, I think
Right.
and now that this space is so meshed together now, and we got the likes of Insta360. We now have Pocket 3. Just between these two is already can be very useful and creative tools for a lot of creators. And then
Yeah. Yeah.
and hybrid cameras, I think to me, you know, if anyone could disagree, please do let me know. But if you do agree, I would like to hear your thoughts as well. I think the
Especially if you agree.
I think the hybrid market in the camera space is slowly dying out. And you
Do
know,
you?
like you see the likes of Canon, they're really focusing on the cine line, and then the Nikon, obviously they acquired red cameras early in the year, is paving some way of maybe making red cameras, or you know, basically focusing on the pro side of it. And Sony already established in the pro stuff, and Panasonic already have something as well. But the hybrid is almost like a consumer thing. I understand, but like you can see that now, a lot of people who previously thought they needed hybrid cameras to document their journey and the travel and things that are shifting towards the Pocket 3 category.
You
Almost
think
like
so?
almost like point and shoot cameras died out because of smartphone. Consumer needs something that is so easy to use. Come, switch on, record, go. They don't need to set up things, change lenses, do this, do that. And if they want something stabilized, oh, let's buy another gimbal, let's attach it, let's balance it, let's set it. The whole process takes about 10-15 minutes before you even
It's
start
horrible. It's
anything.
horrible.
But like, I think things like the Insta360, the Pocket 3 are revolutionary in some ways because they have changed how we use products like these to document things around us.
Do you think camera makers are kidding us that hybrid cameras are better than they actually are? Because they're always put forward as a smartphone upgrade, aren't they?
They do. But
And it's like, so the stabilization's worse. You don't
yeah,
have a cellular connection, so you can't share stuff. And
yeah.
they're better. How does that work?
Well, to be quite frank, if you're purely talking about image quality wise, yes, of course they're an upgrade. Like anything bigger sensor than a smartphone will be an upgrade. But the thing is, people who use smartphone to document their lives, whether it's going to be photo or videos, are those people who used to buy point and shoot cameras. And the point and shoot cameras, if you talking about upgrades, yeah, an SLR would be much better in image quality wise because they got bigger lenses, better optics than a point and shoot camera. They're both using 35mm negatives, so technically they're both full frames. But in terms of like things that you can achieve creativity wise, image quality wise, you can't beat a bigger camera, right? You got better lenses at the end of the day than the compact camera.
You can say that, but at the same time, the sensors have the wrong resolution for 4K video. There's too much resolution. The kind of resolution we want for stills photography is too high for efficient 4K capture. So then you get into all sorts of trouble with oversampling, overheating, cropping, all the other compromises that camera makers have to go through to make their camera shoot video. So I just wonder if it's the wrong kind of product. But poor he's naughty man. He's asking Jimmy if basic mirrorless cameras will start to lose their video functionality. I don't think so, because camera makers have got to add stuff to make you buy new cameras.
Yes, the video capability. The video capability is always going to be there. They're not going to remove it, but they're not gonna perfect it. I don't think they're gonna leave it as is.
So what can camera makers do now to make us buy another new camera next year?
They're gonna have to really focus on image side, image creation side of it. The likes of continue to push the sensor technology. Like global shutter, I think is going to be the next big thing in terms of camera developments. And why don't they concentrate on that, bring it more to the consumer level instead of having to paying $6,000 for a camera, so that will remove physical shutter altogether. You got no shutter, you got no rolling shutter effects, you got instant capture, and potentially much faster burst rate, which is already is for the A9 III. So things like that, more computational stuff.
But then you've got cameras like the Nikon Z8 and Z9. They haven't got global shutters, but they have got electronic shutters. They're fast enough, you don't have to have a global shutter. But I do wonder, it sounds to me like what we're describing is not improved video functionality, but improved stills functionality. Or are you talking about both? Because if we're saying,
I think I'm more concentrate on stills and. People, camera makers can still make video cameras, but I want them to make a bit more like Panasonic does with the GX line. Something that is heavily video. People associate as a video camera. It can still shoot stills, but more a video camera. So it don't matter about the size. Make it bigger, have a vent. You can avoid overheating, for instance. And so if people want video stuff, want high-end video stuff, get a more video dedicated camera. If they want stills, get a still-based camera like the All-in-One Mark II, something like that. But when people's trying to squeeze too much into something, I just think that it's always asking for trouble.
Well, if camera makers want to carry on selling new cameras, maybe that's the way they do it. You buy two cameras, not one. Maybe that's the pitch.
that may be the pitch.
then you could have a camera with a sensor optimized for video and one optimized for stills, because they're not the same kind of sensor. Really.
Well, you may be right, but then I go back to the same argument. How many of you would like to carry two big cameras out and a bunch of lenses? No one, unless you have a film crew, unless you have assistant, unless you have a second person filming you, then you don't mind carrying another body out. But if you're just doing it by yourself, I highly doubtful, you're going to do that, especially with travel restriction these days, your hand luggage space and weight wise and everything.
Yes.
The less is better. The less is actually more. So and that's why tiny things like the Insta360 and DJI Pocket 3 is fantastic, because they're so light and small. It really doesn't take up any space at all.
Do you think they're better than people realize? I mean, I only ever used one drone. I've used the original Mavic Mini,
Yep.
which isn't even 4K,
Yep.
but the video quality, providing you're not turning it too quickly,
Yep.
is pretty remarkable. So, and I think the same. I mean, I haven't used a Pocket 3. I used a Pocket 2 for a long time,
Yep.
and I've shot a lot of video on phones, and I think the quality is higher than most people perceive, most people imagine. It's like a conspiracy to kid people that small cameras can't be good, but they can.
Well, technology has definitely moved on quite a bit since, and 1-inch sensors are getting quite good now, and a lot to do with the processing as well. You know, like now the computer chips are definitely getting better and more powerful, and they can do a lot of AI corrections in the background. You know, a lot of stuff that can enhance the picture quality. The likes, the example is there. All the smartphones nowadays, they can produce very decent amount of very decent image quality, judging by the size of the sensor. It is, so like they can do a lot with software behind it. So I don't think the sensor now plays as big a part as what we used to think.
It only becomes a problem if people say, well, I'm shooting stills, I'll need 24 megapixels.
Yep.
That is a bit inconvenient for efficient video, isn't it? It's all right for 6K, but it's no good for just regular 4K. For that, you just need a 12 megapixel sensor or something of that kind. But so here's another open question.
Yep.
What would you get rid of on today's cameras to return to a simpler way of life,
right,
or to a better way of shooting? What would you get rid of?
Well, since I'll use some examples. I mean, it's quite hard to say. So I'll use some example. Let's say that I'm a Lumix guy. Let's say I got some Lumix cameras. I can't say about Olympus or OM System, not because I'm the ambassador, just because they are still very still focused anyway. So they don't really have anything that's video centric products. So in Lumix, they do seem to have both, right? The G9 Mark II is supposed to be the hybrid camera. The GX Lens is the video base, and all the other lower model like the GX series, the G series before that, they were all kind of more stills focused. So if I have to choose, I would ask Lumix to produce some of these stills focused cameras again, like the GX90, whatever, and the rangefinder style camera that was quite cool and popular. Keep the GX line, but get rid of the G9 Mark II for now. And unless they can make unless they can make the G9 Mark updated version of G9 Mark I. You know, I know it's a bit weird when I say that, but because G9 Mark I was more of a photo camera.
It's a better camera physically than the G9 Mark II in just about every way. It's just a shame that the sensor, they couldn't have put the newer sensor in that body.
It just, to me, that the G9 Mark II is I don't know.
Where's the status panel on the G9 Mark II, Jimmy? Where's that gone? Can you show us the status panel?
The status panel?
Oh, look, it's not there.
No,
on the top.
it's not there.
No, it's gone. It's gone. G9 had that.
And it doesn't have the mode lock button.
Right. So you're not just getting rid of features, you're getting rid of entire cameras then.
Because the thing is, because I got the GX7 now, and I actually use the GX7 exclusively instead of G9 Mark II, and I'm actually going to sell the G9 Mark II. I haven't used it. I haven't used it for months. The G9 Mark II. But like, if you're looking at my use case, I mean, I do primarily photos for my professional jobs, and I do take a lot of photos during my travel, but also film a lot for YouTube's and also during my travel as well. From all of these scenarios that I do, I don't use a G9 Mark II, and that says a lot. If I do some serious filming, I use a GX7 because it's a more complete video camera for me. And also, if I want to do stills, I can either go full frame, my Nikon ZF, or I could just use my all-in-one Mark II. It's got the speed, it's got everything there, so I don't really mind about the megapixel differences between 24 and 20. photographically, I'm really happy with the all-in-one Mark II. So I don't need something like the G9 Mark II, so to speak. And that says a lot about my life as a kind of like photographer slash content creator out these days. That I think the G9 Mark II is becoming more of a in-between product that didn't do well on both sides.
It's so if Panasonic were to make a video centric camera, I think they should copy Blackmagic. Because the Pocket Cinema cameras, bless them, the autofocus is like about 100 years out of date. But it's a 5-inch touchscreen. It's huge. And the video settings are obvious and simple and all on one screen with big buttons. And I know that's not taking features away, which is what I asked for, but that's what you want in a camera for video, I think. But so I don't know. I think I might take away video because as Paul Gaines suggested earlier, in a beginner camera, but then say to beginners, look, this is a stills camera. If you want to shoot video, get this one. Or if you think you might want to do both, we'll sell you both. We'll do your deal. Do it that way. Because a camera that's good at video just looks and handles and works quite differently to one for stills, in my opinion.
No, it is true, because how people film and when they hold the camera for filming is very different to how we hold the camera for stills. It's not the same thing. A lot of the time you find that a video camera guys will either shoot the waist level, so hip down, or basically rig it up to bring up the shoulder levels. It's not quite the same as you're holding the camera normally. It just doesn't quite work ergonomically. So that's why I said, the GX7 is a bigger camera. It's more chunky, but it feels much better holding for filming than the G9 Mark II. So if I have to film something, I won't use the G9 Mark II, even though it has similar sort of capabilities. But the GX7 is by far better, in my opinion.
So since we're kind of in this area, because I know this is something else we're going to talk about, have you shot with the Sony FX30?
No, I have not. No.
I still don't feel that's kind of properly designed for video, but it does at least have mounting points on the body. For adding handles or I think there's an XLR adapter too, which is quite handy. So it's been properly thought through. But the FX30 has run into a spot of bother the last few days, as far as I can understand, with the firmware update. Have you got some? So I mean, you probably know more about this than me, Jimmy, because you were talking about it earlier. But my understanding is that Sony rolled out a firmware update for the A7R5 and one for the FX30 at the same time. And the FX30 one was designed to give it shutter angle adjustment, which is what proper filmmakers would use. But something very bad happened with the A7R5 update, and they thought, oh, we'd better pull the FX30 update too. So it's this whole thing of firmware updates and whether you trust them. Would you wait a few days before you installed one, do you think?
I think to be quite honest, I always advise people not to update firmware straight away. In fact, not just firmware. Software is the same thing. A computer, phone. I always think that if you rush in to update your software, you will probably find yourself in a very tricky situation, as I experienced with the streaming software. Remember?
I didn't mean to bring that up. Sorry, painful memories. Sorry.
So yes, it does happen. But for firmware, and I think that even I know about OEM just recently released some firmware for the OM1 as well. I didn't upgrade to it until literally 3-4 weeks later because I just want to see if there's any error reports come out. And software is the same thing. When every time Apple Mac release an update for iOS or the Mac OS, and my past experience told me that don't do that straight away, because I found that suddenly my printer doesn't work, my camera connection doesn't work, or this doesn't work. If something just doesn't work, then you have to wait for the fix. And if something is critical for your workflow, if you're working, if you're using the computer for work, you can't wait for this thing to be fixed because you need to use it. No. So if something is working right now, I would just basically wait until until everything's ironed out, and then I'm then upgrade it.
So yeah, I'm kind of in that situation with my Fujifilm X-T5, which is for those who don't use them, has not been entirely without focusing issues. It's currently on firmware version 4, which seems slightly more broken than the version 1.x I had when I got it. Right. I mean, at the moment, I'm getting random focus fails.
Oh, really?
I don't know where they've come from. Yeah, perhaps one shot in 20. I don't even know if it's focus fail because nothing is sharp. It's very odd. Maybe there's something going on with the stabilizer. But yeah, I kind of wished I'd stuck with the firmware that came with the camera and perhaps given it a few months or weeks before I caught up with the latest firmware update. So that's kind of bitten me a little. But do you think some camera makers announce a set of specifications for a camera? Everyone gets very excited.
Yeah.
Then when it launches, it turns out that the very things you got excited about are going to be a firmware update in a few months' time. or if you're a particular camera maker, Panasonic, it's the software key you have to pay for. Is that a bit naughty, do you think?
It is a bit naughty, but it's not uncommon these days. Apple does exactly the same thing. The latest iPhone 16 Pro Max.
Oh, with all the AI, yeah.
The AI stuff is later. That later. This later. A lot of stuff is later. So
yeah, it's quite frustrating.
It is.
Yeah, so I guess my feeling is that camera makers, for their financial model to work, have to keep getting us to buy cameras. Yeah. So we have to figure out what it is we want from them. Well, otherwise, we're just going to get just these incremental technical video upgrades.
Well, the thing is, I mean, anyone who's listening right now, if you agree with me, give me a thumb. It's a very simple fix, right? Just any camera maker just have to listen to their customer, exactly what they want. So far, it's basically they think of what they think the consumer needs or wants and give it to us. So a lot of the times, a lot of consumers really wanted a model to do this and that, but that never ever happened, and they give us just overcomplicated products, overpriced, and just force us to accept it, and that's the best solution we can give you right now. More than that, is something that we actually need or want. And that there are. I'm not trying to name brands here, but a lot of brands is doing exactly the same, and I just think that they need to see exactly what the consumer needs.
Do we know what we want?
I don't know.
Because possibly we've already got it. That's the issue I've got. So I tend to do quite a lot of used camera reviews now because I'm constantly surprised about how good a 5-year-old or 10-year-old camera can be for stills photography.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder if we got to the point where we've already got cameras to do what we need. Well, if there's more we need, if there's more we want our cameras to do, we have to figure out what it is.
Well, to be quite honest, I mean, like what I need. I mean, if I give a general overview of things that consumer may want, because I've done a little bit of poll in my YouTube page last couple of weeks, people all reflecting similar sort of way. Basically saying, okay, there are a few categories here. One of them is more like consumer. Consumer want. At the moment, you can see that the likes of X100, the XT, they want something good looking, retro looking. Give it to them. This they don't need to be expensive, sophisticated camera. You can just throw a retro shell on a 5-year camera. That works. As long as you can price it right, people are going to buy them left, right, and center. You don't really have to promote it. And secondly, there are a whole bunch of people who just basically want still photography They don't need all this complicated stuff. And all these days now, people are concentrating on a hybrid market, and every camera coming out these days are overpriced hybrid cameras. There are lack of the beginner level, very basic still camera, like Paul Gans said earlier. You know, they exist before, but they don't now because camera makers stopped making these beginner level cameras, which actually supposed to be actually pretty good. Like the EM10 has been so popular for so many years because people like it's a photographer cameras.
Taylor Swift. Okay. She likes it.
Taylor Swift. There you go. But simple camera, right? And then also there are pros who need the whole all singing, all dancing, the faster shooting speed, which they already produce. But then how many people are going to get those cameras?
But a pro will take 2 cameras.
They do, yes.
They'll take as much as they need.
Yeah.
They won't. I don't think most pros would be that interested in hybrid camera. They'll perhaps take. If you're shooting sports, I suppose you might try and shoot video and stills with what would it be, an EOS R1. But it's just as likely, I think, you'll take an old, what's a DSLR one? My mind's gone. The EOS 1DX3. Might take one of those, and he might take a C300 for video. I don't know. I don't think pros are quite so worried about having one camera doing everything.
Oh, no, definitely not.
But at the entry level end of the market, I was speaking at some do or other with an executive from one of the camera companies, and I said, "Well, look, you stop making cheap beginner cameras. Why?" And he said, "What do you mean why? It's obvious, isn't it?" And what I took that to mean was there wasn't enough money in it. You know, they'd much rather sell you a £1,000 camera or $1,000 camera than a $400 camera. I mean, I think Canon's the exception. With the EOS R100, but the tech in that camera, that is quite old. But, you know, this is Canon, isn't it? Yeah, it is quite old.
But I think the thing is, I think camera makers are slightly missing the point in a way that yes, the lower end camera may not make enough money. You know, I'm pretty sure that they do make some money, but not entirely a lost cause. But the thing is, they need these beginner level cameras to get people into the ecosystem, into the system, so they can buy lenses and upgrade in the future. And at the moment, what I found is so many brands now, they are relying on existing customer to upgrades, to buy into the latest and the greatest, the best lenses. So they are trying to milk as much as possible from the existing base, the customer base. But they're not expanding, and you can see that the market is shrinking simply because they're not attracting new things. They're not attracting new customer from the young, you know, from the people who are the Instagram age, the TikTok age. They're not actually attracting any of them out.
It's it is unfortunately a commercial policy. You see quite a lot that's based on squeezing the known rather than investing in the unknown. So rather than take a chance on new markets, they'd rather squeeze the markets they know until every last bit of juice has been extracted.
Well, sounded like the fossil fuel issues that we have, right?
Perhaps.
But that's the trouble, right? You know, like I'm gonna grow old one day. I mean, I will still continue to use whatever I have.
But I don't recommend it, Jimmy. I wouldn't do it if I were you. Not work for me.
But the thing is, like my kids now, you know, like if you ask them to take photo, I just, oh, Dad, can you give me your phone instead? You know, like they, you know, that's the thing we're facing right now. You know, like my wife, you know, she would ask me to take a proper photograph. If she knows that she wants something proper done, she will ask me, take up your big camera and do something. But majority of the time, she just use a smartphone or ask me to get a phone out to take some snaps.
And the thing is, all this talk about being able to connect with your camera via your phone, I don't swallow that at all. It's just too much of a faff. I mean, basically, if you're out with your partner, and your partner says, "Can you get a photo?" It'll say, "You want it on your phone, won't you?" And they'll say, "Yes." So give me your phone, and you do it that way. You can't even be bothered to transfer a picture from one phone to another. So you're never going to do it from a camera to your phone to their phone. It's just not going to happen, is it?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just reading
So,
a comment from
anyway,
Andrew.
yeah,
Andrew said,
yeah.
pentaction. I still like that term there.
Sounds too much like Galaxian to me, which is like the old arcade game.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm supposed to be calling myself Olympian then, I think. That's
So I've got a few formats. One of mine going to be a Canonian.
Canon.
I'm a Nikonian, I suppose.
Nikonian.
What the Fujifilm used to be Fujinian. That doesn't sound right.
No. Sounds like some sort of exotic fruits to me.
Yeah, Fujian. No, Fijian. That's wrong. I don't know what you would be.
But yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's an interesting time. But if the camera makers or camera market doesn't react and soon enough, the existing market is going to dry out one day. You know, it's not gonna continue.
It's in the print industry. This is what's happened.
Yeah.
Instead of being outward thinking, print publishers have got very wide, very cautious, and they're just trying to maximize revenue from a shrinking market. And one day it's all going to just implode. And I'm worried that's going to happen with cameras. Instead of being outward thinking and inventive, they're just going to try and maximize revenue from a shrinking market. And half the reason it's shrinking is because nobody's doing anything new.
Yeah.
You know, that's why it's shrinking.
If you look at the overall photography market and in terms of like people who are taking photos actively, the numbers actually going up. I mean, the population is actually growing, but the thing is, the actual camera market is shrinking. And then people can blame smartphone, however they want. But the thing is, smartphones are now becoming the primary photo taking machine for 90% of the population. And that is not going to change unless the camera industry change and somehow they have something that is basically kill the market, similar to what we just discussed earlier about DJI Pocket 3. It may actually change the hybrid market completely. That's my view anyway, because it does so many things so right. It's almost like the smartphone equivalent, but for video takers.
Do you know what I'd love?
Yeah.
I'd love a camera, a mirrorless camera or DSLR, which interface properly with my phone. So that, you know, if you've got, say, a MagSafe iPhone, just put it on the back of the camera, it sticks to the camera, and there's a wired connection, or at least some quicker connection, so you're not fiddling around with Wi-Fi. Just get some proper hardware communication between cameras and phones. That would drag cameras back in the 21st century, I think. But I guess that's not going to happen. Too many licensing problems, I guess.
Yeah, well, there are products like the Alice camera, if you still remember the Alice camera.
Yeah.
And that's still ongoing. I mean, that's supposed to, halfway solving the solution, using AI to do a lot of stuff, but also giving the connectivity, but attaching the phone to the back of the unit to interact with the camera and the lenses. But I don't know.
I've never been able to use a phone with a camera by Wi-Fi in a way that I think even approaches convenience. I mean, just the other day I had to film a live intro to a video. So on my EOS R8 on a tripod, I was there video in my background. So, I can pose it on the phone. I can check the focus on the phone, start recording on the phone. But of course, what happens is the camera decides, well, it's been on for 2 minutes, it's going to shut down. So my Wi-Fi stops, and I have to go through the whole process again. Switch the camera back on, go back to where I'm sitting, restart the Wi-Fi connection. It's ridiculous. This is 2024. This is not, like inventing horseless carriage. It should be better than this.
Well, anyway, the thing is, anyone who used digital cameras for the last 10, 15 years will probably agree that like anything to do with remote connections using your apps or phone has not improved a single bit for the last 15 years.
No,
it hasn't. It really hasn't. They may have changed the app a little bit, looks a bit more modern, this and that, but the connection, the processes you have to go through to do things, it's the same. It takes the same amount of time.
It does. It's no easier than it ever was. And even when you've got it all working, if you shoot a RAW file or a 24 megapixel image on your camera, you're not going to transfer that to your phone.
Yeah,
Unless things have changed, the automatic transfer is generally like a 2 megapixel
yeah,
JPEG or
yeah,
something of that sort.
yeah.
So it's not the same. It's not the same.
No, Andrew just talking about smartphone and compared to to probably better like real camera, and I would have to say if people want to photograph the moon or like anything quite specific like wildlife and thing, yeah, smartphone can't do any of those. But I think we'll talk about like more like general photography, like day-to-day capture, your kids running around, you go and travel, just capture the tempo here and there. I guess that's probably what we're talking about more than very, very specific high-end stuff. And I mean, astrophotography, you can't do astrophotography with any smartphone at this moment in time.
I, I
Yeah,
think I think as well what we have to understand is people's standards of technical quality vary perhaps more than we think. I
yeah,
mean, you can meet somebody who takes a picture of the moon and says this is terrible because you can't make out this
yeah,
crater or that crater
yeah,
properly.
yeah,
But you get somebody else that says they've got a great picture of the moon on their phone, and
yeah,
it's a yellow blob, and they
yeah.
say, well, yes, it's a big blob. It's not a tiny blob. It's a speck in the sky. So people's standards vary.
Yeah,
So
and but I have to say it's also a cultural thing as well. And I think for those who come from America, I know you guys like your photos taken, and I also really appreciate you guys do print your photos, which is something that I think us British are getting worse and worse. We don't print our photos
yeah,
anymore,
yeah,
and it's really sad just to see people not printing them. Even
yeah.
the years when I was working as a wedding photographer, the last few years that I was still doing, I mean, I still do occasional weddings here and there. But the time when I was a full-time wedding photographer, the last few years I was working in the space, all my clients would not ask for wedding albums, all of them. So like,
Hmm.
I would probably say that even wedding album business is probably going very, very soon because
I think so. Yeah.
people aren't interested in print anymore, which is
No.
a really
No.
sad thing to see. And I always try to sell them the album. It's great. Look at the printed quality. It's tangible, something you can touch and feel about it, and something is very different than looking at a screen. But then again, most of them just like to prefer actually to share them on social media, on small screen like a phone screen. So
Well, you.
in that case, what's the point even having a 20 megapixel camera? All you need just 8
Well, yeah.
megapixel. That's more than enough for the smartphone.
You can't get likes from a print, can you?
No,
Terrible. What
it
terrible?
is
What we've
terrible.
become.
It is. That's the world we're living in right now, and unfortunately, that's the way it goes at the moment. So, like you said, people's perception of quality is very different these days because all they ever want is look good on the screen, and most of the time, I would say 80% of the time will be phone screen, and they're so small, and that means
Yeah,
that
yeah, it's fine.
you don't need a lot of processing. You don't need a lot of quality optically to present something that is reasonable on a phone screen.
Mm. No, you don't. You don't.
No.
Um, have you got any new gear, Jimmy, that we haven't
Have I got
seen
any
yet?
new gear?
Yeah.
I have a new lens. Really interesting. Video is coming on Friday, so I'm not going to say too much.
Uh, uh,
I have a new lens that's made in Japan. Interestingly,
right.
made in Japan. Very likely hand built by someone. So you're gonna see that on Friday. So hopefully you guys will like that video. But it's an interesting little lens. Very quirky. Very Lomo light. If I give you some hint. So
Okay.
those people who are into lomography, kind of filmic looks and aesthetics, that will be the type of product I'm talking about. But it's a lens that can be adapted to all sorts of formats. So that is interesting.
So you're just going to tease us with that. We're going to have to wait to find out what. That's very interesting.
Yes.
Um, I've got a new microphone for review.
Oh, ooh,
I
interesting.
bet you use microphones. I bet you've used every kind of microphone there is.
I use a
So
fair few. Yes.
I'm going to ask you, what's the most expensive lavalier mic you ever bought? So
um.
for non-mic nerds,
Yeah.
this is just something you clip to your shirt
Yep.
and then you plug it in, and you just get the audio recorded from this tiny little mic. It's just you speaking. So like interviews and what have you.
Well, the most expensive mic that I ever bought is £150, I would say, for this type of microphone. And I do know that microphone in generals, they can go very, very high end. You know, like some of the musicians, you know, some of the mics that the musician used for concerts and things like that, those can be extortionately expensive. But tell me, how expensive this is?
Would you pay £259 for an analog lav mic?
Oh, it has to be very, very good quality then.
But that's what's worrying me. So I'm going to have to test it because I've got other lav mics. Yep. So before I rip into this one too much, I've got to test it against some cheaper ones, which isn't going to be easy. So I've got a tin ear. So I don't know. I don't quite know how I'm going to do that. But but interesting, isn't it? But so this is from a camera maker.
Yeah. Oh.
So I think this is what happens, that if you stay on brand, you can often pay rather more for things than if you go third party. So my other lav mics, they tend to come as a bundle. I mean, I've got the Rhodes Wireless Pro kit.
Yeah,
which is around £40 more expensive than its microphone.
Yeah,
but the kit includes 2 transmitters with onboard recording,
right?
A receiver, a charge case, and 2 lav mics with clips and windshields. The whole lot, in other words. So I might take a little bit convincing that I'd pay that much for a lavalier mic, even if it was from Sony. Oh, I wasn't going to say. Oh.
There you go. Okay. Just delete the last couple of seconds.
But no, it seems a lot of money. I mean, Sony does make some
it is, but then
wireless mics, which are quite interesting for its gear.
But then again, if you're talking about like broadcasting level kind of quality, it can be expensive.
Let's see.
Yeah.
I guess. If only it had a broadcast quality reviewer, but I'll see how I get on. I'll give it the benefits of the doubt. Yeah. But it's just an analog lavalier mic. That's all it is. I imagine it's got a bit of a larger pickup than usual cheap ones, but I mean, lavalier mics.
It's probably got a very wide response, and you know, like it's quite hard to tell unless you really test it. Right.
Okay. That's really put the pressure on. Okay. I look forward to doing that.
Angela's in the house. Hello, Angela, and welcome back. So he's got one comment here. Has we got an answer that OM Digital Solution has an R&D department? Chris Nichols and Jordan Drakes said that they need to show more signs of having R&D investment.
Well, that is a good point. I shall say nothing.
Yeah, I shall say nothing because I have.
We'll all say nothing.
I have no clue. I have no clue. But all I can say is during the transition between Olympus and OM System, or what was the company who bought Olympus? What was the company? JIP. Yeah. Yeah. When JIP bought the camera division from Olympus. One of the agreement was the R&D that comes under the Olympus optical engineering departments would go with it as well. So that means they should actually have an R&D department for the optical side at least. So because they're still under the contract of making lenses for their medical equipment for Olympus. So funny enough, because they don't actually keep that, so they actually basically separated that part of it out to OM System now, since they own the optical engineering side and still under contract for Olympus Medical in Japan. Don't forget that also Olympus still owns, I think, a percentage of share or stakes in the OM System Corporation. So there's still some involvement here and there, still some contracts going in between them. But how much of an R&D in the camera department, I'm not entirely sure. But optically, certainly is still there. I'm pretty sure of that. That they continue to function within OM System, Now, perhaps a lot of the stuff that they do now is possibly for the Olympus Medical, and but that's how I understand it anyway. But anything else other than that, I'm not entirely sure. So let's see. Let's hope. Yeah, but it would be interesting to see some new products from OM System. I think that everyone who are a brand loyalist and would want the same thing, right? Because we have seen new cameras from literally everybody, but OM System. I know OM System has announced or released the OM1 Mark II, but that is essentially an upgrade from OM1 Mark I, not necessarily a brand new camera with a brand new gut. So so something that I think perhaps you're right, and OM System need to show something that they are working on something, or at least they have something new coming up.
Or just restart production on some of the old stuff.
Pen.
No, I've gone on enough about the pen. I'm not going to be drawn into that again. But yes, so I don't know. I mean, but they're not the only ones who are kind of throttled back on the development. I think the R&D. I think a lot of companies. I mean, like Sony's new cameras are generally, what's the word I'm looking for? Processing upgrades rather than physical upgrades. So I don't know.
It's going to be hard now. I mean, like even the likes of Apple, for instance, if you look at the iPhone, every year is incremental. Well, we talked about this as well. Like every generation's camera these days are incremental. You only notice the difference when you compare the 2024 model against the 2012 model. That's when you see the leap.
So we say nobody actually makes a new product anymore. Just iterations of the one you want to have.
You know what the problem is? I think the problem is unlike the film days, the analog days, new cameras only release every 5, 6, 7 years. Well, we're now getting new models every year. It just the product cycle is so short now.
That's because they've got to keep selling them.
And that's the problem. And that's the problem.
I have heard rumblings about a new Sony A7 IV.
Yep.
But I don't know anything specific about that. I suppose I could look that up. Sony A7V rumor. Because it doesn't seem so very long ago that that we had the A7 IV, but then it was a couple of years back, I guess. So I'm just trying to see what the specs might be. Oh, so it's all a bit vague, but the upgrades will be related to speed and new AI features. There you go. So more of the things you didn't particularly want. Well, I didn't particularly want. That's the trouble, isn't it?
That is. But then again, I think a lot of camera makers should take notes from the likes of Leica. Okay, I know Leica is a very different beast altogether, and but the thing is, they focus on a very small, clean lineup of products. They have lenses. They have only a couple of still photography products, and that basically it. But they're still selling all day long. But they do make a lot of money, and I think the business model that now for majority of the consumer digital markets space is that they're cannibalizing each other within their own company.
Would it be nice to see an actually new product? Not just an upgraded product, but something that was actually new.
I think so. The thing is, they have the
resources. Revive the market a bit.
They have the resources, they have the technology and talent to do it. But like you said, they are now playing very conservatively within themselves. They're not playing brave. They're not trying to venture out of the box. And then they are very stuck up in a way, in their own way. Just probably like Sony used to be Trinitron. They believed in Trinitron so much they think that the TV market is going to be there forever. And who knows? LCD came along, then plasma came along, then LED came along. That changed everything that we are nowadays. So it is what it is at the moment. They haven't changed the fundamental designs of the cameras for decades. And
No.
technology-wise, yes, we're getting new sensors, we're getting new this and new that, but that is only, very superficial to me. There's nothing innovative about it. And okay, with a couple of exceptions, perhaps Olympus did some the computational stuff like the live bulb, live ND. These are really cool stuff. But overall, the AI tracking, we see that coming long ago. It's not something that we would say science fiction. Because DJI are already doing some sort of recognition with the drone, like many years ago before we had all this AI stuff, even though it may not be as good as today. So it's going to be something new to revive the market. I think it needs to be completely new concept, very innovative, have a lot of features that can do something that's so different that will transform the way we take photographs or videos.
Do you think there's any market in simplicity? Do you think perhaps cameras have become so layered and complex that it's putting people off and is getting in the way of creating content?
Well, that is exactly what we talked about at the beginning, right? The reason why I think the DJI Pocket 3 is so successful is because it's so simple. There's not much to it. I mean, you can adjust parameters within the setting itself, but you don't have to. You just switch it on and you record. You just run and gun, like you said. You don't have to do anything. And the camera these days is so complicated. A lot of consumers, I'm not talking about professional, but consumers, they either don't have the time or simply just not interested in this complexity from the camera. Do you have to go through menus and layers to get something that you really need? There are so many buttons. Okay, we keep talking about customizability of the camera when it comes to do reviewing and things like that. It's good to be customizable, but those are for the experienced photographer or filmmakers. They're not for consumers. Consumer don't need all those buttons. All they want is an on button, shoot button, and that's it.
Well, yeah, and I think as well in some ways camera design has gone a little backwards. It's gone towards, I think it's easier to sell complexity and features than is to sell simplicity. But I think camera makers have overlooked the fact that the cameras you need physical product design to be good, not just the technology. You need a thing that's physically usable and appealing and ergonomic, not just something with lots and lots of power. Because how long have you and I been going on about Sony making more and more powerful cameras, but never changing the design, which is frustrating. It's great if you think the design is brilliant. It's not so good if you don't. But they just won't do it, which is a bit bizarre. But I think cameras like the X100 6 or V1 show that a modern audience cares more about how things look than what they do. And I think camera makers have been very, very slow to grasp that. Can't even say grasp that.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's go back to what I said earlier. Like camera makers don't really listen to people.
I don't think they do, and I think there might be more people shooting video if the video wasn't so complicated. When you look at all the parameters you've got now for shooting video, I mean, you've got resolution and frame rate. Well, you've got to have those, I guess. Then you get to choose the codec, right? Then you've got different compression ratios, perhaps within those file formats. Then you've got, do you want 10-bit or 8-bit? There's another parameter. And then do you want to shoot log? Oh, I don't know. And you've got so many layered parameters. You've got hundreds of permutations. How are you supposed to figure your way through that? You just need 3 buttons, don't you? Good quality, slow motion, a time lapse, something as basic as that. Just basic as that.
That's it.
That's what your phone does. But that's what a beginner camera needs to do.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to blind people with science, just condense and simplify and just do these simple things.
And that may be why Taylor Swift liked the EM10 Mark IV so much, because the EM10 was that simple. To be honest, there weren't much to it. If you remember the menu system at the back. It's actually all icon based. It's very every time you switch the mode.
Long since I've used one.
Yeah, it's big icons at the back. It just basically you select whichever option you want, slow motion, not or whatever, 1080 or full HD or Ultra HD.
Yeah.
For videos, and for stills, it just be people, plants, landscape, big icons, simple thing. And that's what beginner level should be. And I think that a lot of people like that camera because of how simple to use, and yet still very capable. It still has 5-axis stabilization, got good IBIS, and then it's got very good contrast detect AF. You don't, it's not the latest and the greatest, but it's perfectly fine for everybody. Really,
I've always thought it perfectly adequate. I mean, wouldn't it be nice just have? I wouldn't even offer a choice of resolutions. I'd just make it 4K.
Yeah.
And if you want 1080, well, you can do it later in your software or when you upload it to YouTube, can't you? But just like 4K normal quality, 4K high quality, 4K high speed.
Yeah.
Just do that.
Yep.
So that's my manifesto.
No, but I think camera makers should do something like that. Making something so simple that everyone can pick it out and use. And at the moment, they're not. They don't. They completely ignore that market. And I think that could be the market that can revive, the whole industry, simply because they need, first of all, new people using the camera. Second, they need to grow the market, not what we said about earlier, sucking up existing blood, which we got limited blood in our body. Like once you suck it dry, we become vampires.
They want it. We've got it. They want it.
Which is not great.
They think, hell, we can make new blood. We just draw it off gently, a bit at a time. I've got another rumor for you.
Okay, go on then.
You must know this one already. 61 megapixel Pentax DSLR.
Oh no,
I
haven't heard about. No, really?
Yeah.
Pentaxian.
Yeah,
who's the Pentaxian earlier?
That'd be a K1 Mark III. Can you imagine that with the Sony sensor?
Okay, that's interesting. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
But I have to warn Pentax though. As much as I like your stuff, I like your SLR a lot.
Yeah.
You need new lenses. You do need new lenses. You need to release a bunch of really high-end stuff to cope with the 61 megapixel sensor.
I suspect a lot of the full frame ones they had assistance from Tamron. And the Tamron does make some quite good lenses. So we'll see. We'll see.
But they need a bigger range. They need a new 51.4, maybe 51.2. They need something cool, like 88. I think they have the 85.1.4, but they don't have anything like a wide angle side. They haven't got much wide angle stuff.
Bit more work needed, but we'll see. We'll see whether it actually happens or not. But that would be quite a smart move because I always thought the K1 was a much better camera than the APS-C ones. But that's just my opinion. But
Linda had a comment. It's quite funny. OG, I'm a Lumixian.
Yeah,
doesn't sound nice.
I don't know.
Actually, I think it sounds all right. Actually, Lumixian. Sounds better than Fuji, whatever you're trying to say earlier. Fujian.
So I don't know where Linda's based, but in the US they seem to refer to Lumix more than Panasonic. Lumix as a brand, which is interesting. We always call it Panasonic over here, but I think in the States people think of it more as being Lumix. Lumixian, I've heard worse things.
Yeah, well, I think Panasonic really tried to ditch. Well, Panasonic, the mother company, trying to ditch the Panasonic brand within the camera division.
You think so?
I think so. The last couple of trade shows that I've been, the photography show, actually, they weren't in the photography show. I can't remember, were they? Oh yeah, they were in the photography show, and also the filmmaker shows early in the year. Both booths that I went were without the Panasonic branding, just Lumix branding. So there's no word mentioned about Panasonic.
Oh.
Yeah. So I think they try to level up a little bit with the Americans. So they're trying to maybe just unify their branding for the camera division as Lumix instead of Panasonic Lumix.
So if just as switching back to an earlier topic, Jimmy, if you were going to do an OM1 Mark III,
Yeah.
and if we're talking about simplifying rather than adding, what would you get rid of?
What do I get rid of? I would probably.
Well,
I'm going to be very
stuff
careful
you could
right
get rid of. Okay, well, you can pick a different brand. Pick any camera. What would you get rid of to make it a better camera?
For stills,
and you can pick any camera.
Well, I think, like I said, I think I don't like hybrid stuff. So
no.
You either give me a still camera or give me a video camera. So I guess if I want a new camera for photography, I would just get rid of the video function, focus on the stills, and make it ergonomically better. Give me the top screen, whatever. I just need something that will benefit me as a photographer, how I use the camera, than anything else.
I think the thing is that in the past I've often thought people say get rid of the video features. I think we're being a bit of a stick in the mud, but actually, when you think about it, the video capabilities of modern hybrid cameras do really get in the way of a lot of the controls and interface. Yep. Because you're offering two sets of options, really. You've got the external buttons are kind of compromised to allow for video shooters, and the interface is full of video stuff that may or may not be relevant. It's just a much more cluttered environment to work in.
Yep. And you've got one more mode on the mode dial instead of having another custom mode.
Well, yeah. If I'm not a big fan of custom modes, but I think a lot of people are. So yeah, I think that is a good point. If you're going to make us, if they're brave enough, camera makers would just make a camera for stills.
Well, Leica
made a camera for video by that.
Remember, Leica made that decision.
Yeah.
The M240 was the very first M that has video capabilities, and it turned out that the video capabilities was not used at all by all Leica fans and fanboys, fangirls. So when M10 came along, it got rid of the video features completely. So back to photography only camera. So at the moment, the only cameras that has video capabilities is the Q and the SL line, which is more like a mirrorless setup. But the M is pure photography line now. So I would like to see camera makers do something like that. Have a photo stills only camera that is capable, pure, simple. Exposure triangle is all we needed for a camera, really. And just the pure, the better. Then you can have the high, all singing, all dancing, tech-savvy nerds will like, and the high frame rate, high megapixel, high buffer rates, all the frame rates we ever needed for videos and kind of thing. You can have all that in one camera, but, I want them to really have something that's distinctively different within their own lineup. At the moment, I think all the cameras is, well, we're already saying it's called too complicated, but it's complicated enough for us to confuse ourselves between different models. Sony probably the worst offenders here. Like all the cameras have essentially the same capabilities, but they just call them differently.
Well, yeah. You see, A7S3, FX3, FX6, ZV-E1. They're all basically the same technology platform, but it's like multiple tiny segments of the same broad market. I mean, if somebody says, I want to get into high quality vlogging, do I get the Sony ZV-E1 or the A7S3 or the FX3? I don't know. Any of them, I don't know.
It's hard
I'm sure
to recommend,
Sony might
right?
know. Yeah,
it's hard. Even for a guy who's selling the camera in the store, he probably have a hard time trying to recommend something to people. It's like,
you're not allowed to say you don't know in the camera store, unfortunately.
I know, but the thing is, obviously the salesperson always refers to the customer, ask the customer a question.
Yeah.
What are you doing it with? Are you going to shoot a lot of people? And the customer say, oh yeah, I'll shoot a lot of kids and things like, oh yeah, all of these cameras have face detection. And do you need to do actions that, all of them can shoot 60 frames per second.
Yeah.
How can you recommend? Everything does everything.
Have you got eye detection, tracking? Yeah, they all do that. Yeah. But which one's got the best sensor? Oh, they're all the same sensor. Yeah.
They're all made by Sony.
So do you think that having cameras do too many things dilutes their effectiveness?
Yes.
You do.
I totally, absolutely yes. I think so.
So
there's no difference now. It is essentially, I think.
Yeah, I mean I'm thinking of a camera like the Sony A7R5, which is an excellent stills photography camera, but it also shoots video. But because of the complications of capturing video from such a high resolution sensor, the options are extremely complicated. This gives you the impression that the A7R5 is an extremely complicated camera. It isn't particularly. For stills photography, it's quite straightforward. It's all the video stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not even going to be that good for video. The sensor is too high resolution, really. You're constantly juggling crop ratios, oversampling, frame rates, and all the rest. So that would be a much better camera, in my opinion, if they've forgot about the video. Nobody's going to buy a Sony A7R5 for video. It's a superb stills camera. Let it just do that, I would say. And then if people say, what about video? Sell them an A7S3.
Yeah, there you go. Or buy a Pocket 3.
or buy a Pocket 3,
Yeah, I mean, it is. And I think they, they should be more different to each other, all the lineup are so confusing now in any camera brands. I think they and that in a way that may be why some of the makers has purposefully discontinuing the lower line, because they don't see the point, not only just from the profit point of view, because how are we going to make them? How can we make a small camera or cheap camera or beginner level camera that is beginner, but yet have features that people still want? But essentially, you're throwing everything that the bigger brother has.
Yeah,
pretty much.
I think there is a tendency to imagine they've got to appeal to the widest possible audience, and I'm not sure that's a good strategy. Wouldn't you be better off with strong appeal to a particular target audience? But then that's just an argument for strategists. But if you look at what Fujifilm has done with the XH2 and XH2S and the XS10 and 20, they've deliberately designed a much more mainstream kind of camera because they think there's a much bigger audience. But the trouble is they're also pitching into a market where there's much more competition.
Yeah.
So would Fujifilm have been better off sticking with its strong, quirky, retro approach, rather than trying to mix it with the same kind of camera with a bunch of other brands that have been doing this for years?
Yeah, absolutely. But then I have to praise for what Fujifilm has done for the X100 line, and regardless whether it became popular or not. But I think they really kept the X100 as a photographer's camera, and same goes to the Ricoh GR line, which is the same thing.
Yeah,
the video capabilities of these two cameras are absolutely useless in today's standards. The stabilization is rubbish. The GR only shoot 1080, not even 4K. So you're
not going to shoot video with it.
People who buy the GR is for photography. People who buy the X100, whether you're fashion knob or not, but then you still take photos, not for videos.
Yeah.
So they stuck their guns and keep it as a photography camera. So I praise them for that. And I want
that's perfectly true. Yeah.
Yeah, I want more companies to do that. Just to make photographers' cameras that to please the photographers' crowd, and that is the photography market. In general, we're talking about, for anything who takes videos, that's the video market. That isn't actually in the photography market. So I know people that are blurring the line these days. We are hybrid cameras, this and that. We shoot both. We do this and that. But the same arguments go back to my original statement right at the beginning of the chat, is that if I'm a solo creator, if I'm going out to do things, I would rather use a Pocket 3 instead of having two separate proper camera. It's just not feasible, not convenient, takes a long time to set up. It's just not easy thing to do, full stop.
Yeah, and you can offer a different kind of service with that kind of camera. You haven't got to keep clients waiting while you set up. You haven't got to direct them to do certain things in certain ways. to suit the camera and the rig you're shooting with. It's just a different way of filming.
Yeah, I mean, if I do a commercial film project, I mean, I take all my GX6 and GX7 out and just shoot all day long. It's a video cameras does video things, not both.
Yeah. I mean, the GH7 is probably ideal because that is made for video, but it actually takes quite good stills.
Yep.
But a lot of cameras that take quite good stills are a bit less effective at video. So I don't know. But it is difficult to recommend to people what they should get. I mean, it's like the Lumix S line.
Yeah.
It looks like the perfect solution for video, but unless something has changed, you can't shoot 4K 60 for width.
No,
you can do 4K 30. It's cropped. These limitations are it's frustrating for the experienced photographer and videographer, and it's damn confusing for newcomers who can't understand why you choose one option and another one becomes unavailable.
Yeah.
It's just make them. I'd say for video, I think do what Blackmagic does. So you can do this or this. Tap the button, and that's it.
And Angelo is very interesting there. He said Sean Robinson from Lumix USA in their weekly Lumix Live said that releasing a camera without video will shrink the possible customer and make the camera expensive, and EVF is showing a video.
Well, the thing is that possible customers have to be translated into actual customers, and it's no good having 100 million possible customers if only 5 of them buy the camera. So it's not enough to say how many potential customers there are. The actual proof is how many buy the camera. So, and I think this is what Fujifilm did. They thought, well, look, if we carry on with things like the X Pro and the XT, we've got a possible customer base of, say, 10,000 in this territory. Yeah. But if we go mainstream, we know that there's potential for 100,000.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean to say you're going to sell any more cameras, because you might, to reach a wider audience, you might be making a camera that's less compelling for all of them. It's not the same. The size of the audience doesn't necessarily guarantee sales.
No, it doesn't.
You can't argue with accountants and strategists. Because they've got the PowerPoints.
Yeah, and Cal said that as a wildlife photographer, I really need one camera that can do both photos and video without swapping. I mean, I think I think that what we just said isn't for everybody. I think it's more for the general market, and obviously you're in the wildlife category. It's already quite specific. So like. Yeah, go on then.
I think that instance, if you're taking stills and you need to film the same subject with the same lens, it obviously makes sense to be able to do it on the same camera. Very often you're shooting differently for stills and video, so that if you go to a wedding, for example, the stills they shoot and the video they shoot are very different things with different camera setups. So as the last one I was at, the stills were all done quite formally. There were some candid ones, for the album, of guests and at the reception, cutting a cake, that kind of thing. But the video was much more immediate and immersive. And that they were using a Pocket 3 for that. And I think it's a Sony on a gimbal. That's a very different setup to what you'd use for the stills photography at those events. So I think for Carl's example of wildlife, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. Stills video almost without moving the camera from your eye. But in many instances, you need a completely different setup for video to stills.
You do, and also at the same time, if I may add to it, Carl, is depending on what sort of quality of video you want to achieve or to capture during your photo session. Let's say if you want to capture a wildlife animal in a more cinematic way, in a proper way, so you're starting to have a look at the shutter angle or the shutter frame rate to maximize the motion blur effects for that particular effect you want to achieve. where when you use the same setting as a photograph, which quite often you have to choose a very fast shutter speed to freeze the action. When you immediately press the record button, then the computer generally would choose the same frame rate that you chosen for the photo mode, and that means you may not get the same effect that you want from a video point of view. So that would be my usual concern. So I always say to a lot of wedding photographer when I was teaching them is that if you want to be hybrid, you're going to be very, very careful, because cinematically speaking, if you want to use the 180 degree rules, you are basically looking at doubling your frame rate. For instance, if you want to shoot 25 frames per second, you need to shoot 150th. And would you actually shoot a photograph with 150 shutter speed? Possibly not in a wedding situation. You probably want at least 100, like 125th, 150th to freeze actions, to capture the moment. But you can't switch instantly to that 150 shutter speed while keeping the same depth of field, i.e. the aperture, open. So you have to employ an ND filter, and you can't do all that at one time.
I think there are some hybrid cameras that will separate the stills and video settings, but I can't off the top of my head tell you which ones. But that is certainly an issue, that the way you set the camera up for video will often be very different to how you set it up for stills, even if it comes to the focus mode you want to use, or the stabilization mode, for example. It's I think in certain instances where you need to swap between them without moving the camera from your eye, just be very literal about it, I can understand. But in every other situation I've been in, everything has been so different. It's quicker to pick up another camera than it is to change the camera you're holding.
Yeah, I mean, I often find that is the case, that especially in those hybrid moments, that people want to do both stills and video, because video isn't exactly the same as photos, especially when you're considering the motion blur side of it for cinematic purposes. You do need a certain shutter angle to achieve that result, and you can't just choose any shutter speed to do that. Otherwise you're going to have skip frames, and your footage will not look as smooth.
Brittle, isn't it?
You will not look as smooth as you want it to be, even if you shoot a high speed slow motion, and that's the same thing. So you're going to be very, very careful with that.
And it's complicated as well, isn't it? If you are filming a wedding and there's only one of you, you've got your 70 to 200 on, or its equivalent, because you're doing some shots of the guests, and then suddenly the bride says, "Oh, we need a video of the first dance," and you've got your camera on stills with the 70 to 200, not on a gimbal. What you actually need is your like 20mm 1.4, whatever it is, and with a camera on a gimbal, and you can't say, "Look, can you give me 3 minutes to set my camera up and I'll come and film the dance?" They won't like that. So it's sorry.
Just T-Brand, just say, can you do a custom mode for it? Well, it's the same as a movie mode, really. What my concern is, people you may not understand if you're not really into the filming side of it, is that you do need a certain shutter angle, i.e. or shutter speed, to have the correct cinematic effect, the correct motion blur, correct look in the movie making. Let's just to put it simply, a lot of the time in the UK in PAL, do we still PAL and NTSC? I don't think we call it these days, but let's say we.
I don't think we bother with that now, do we? I think that's gone, but it certainly does affect frame rates.
So put it simply, if you're shooting at let's say photographing an event, and your setting on the photo side of it is, let's say if you shoot wide open, let's say you shoot f2.8 and using a ISO 800, 1/400 of a second in indoor environments. Let's put it that way. And if you in that moment, if you want to switch to video, you can't use the 1/400 shutter speed for that effect, because otherwise your movie is not going to be smooth. But if you want to keep the 2.8 aperture, that means you will have to use an ND filter to cut down the light to use the correct shutter speed. Or you have to stop down the aperture so that you can keep the shutter speed down to 1/50th of a second for that correct shutter speed. So that's the concern I have. It's not so much about changing the mode or changing anything in the camera, because you do need something to that is correct for the video purposes.
So that makes me think of the confetti shop. So
Yep.
that if the clients want a photograph of them, the confetti being thrown, that's going to be a fast shutter speed, isn't it? Because you want to kind of stop it. But if you're filming it, you're going to want to film it in a kind of cinematic way. So
Yep.
you're going to need a slower shutter speed effectively.
Yep.
And you're not going to be able to do that without an ND filter.
No.
So
That's
that
right.
means suddenly swapping from a camera and lens with no ND filter. Say, look, stop, put the confetti back, give me a minute, put your ND filter on. It's not easy.
Yeah, not as direct as what
You
people
type-
may think. Yeah.
No. And my particular issue with custom modes is I can never remember what the hell I set them to. There are so many parameters. You think one day you think, right, I'm going to be doing two different things. I've got two custom modes. I'll set one up this way, one up that way. Next week, can you remember what the hell you did? I can't. So you have to start again in case you muck it up.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yeah.
Just me.
But like that's why I think that hybrid cameras, as good as people think it is, I think that this is probably an oversight for in practicality's point of view. I think people may not actually realize you can't really do two things at once, and it's not as simple as that. You can use the same camera to do different things, but in a separate occasion, in a very separate way, not at the same time.
It takes a while to swap them over, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and
Yeah.
changing the settings, set up the ND, whatever, is very very different way of doing things. And even though that theoretically is very simple, similar, oh, you have to set the exposure correct, you have to expose them correctly, the light and shadow, da 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 da. But then in videos, there's a lot more to consider when it comes to that, like the shutter angle, and the breathing. Even I haven't even talked about breathing. There's another thing that
Don't get Jimmy started on focus breathing.
that still photographer never ever really bother too much about. Oh, Rod just disappeared. I hope it's nothing to do with his computer. He did say something wrong with it earlier. But yeah, and so what do you guys think about what we talked about earlier? Where were you, Rod? Did you just disappear?
The minute I told you not to talk about focus breathing, I think you cut me off. I think you did that on purpose to me.
Oh, it's my fault.
No, it's fine. Focus breathing is very interesting. You pointed that out to me, and I do now start checking it, and that is quite interesting to do. I had Sony 85 1.4 GM2 in for review, and one of the bullet points in the press release was suppressed focus breathing. Now, optically suppressed focus breathing. Now, whenever I hear the word suppressed, I think that means there is some. So I checked, and there is some. And I know Sony also does the digitally corrected focus breathing.
Yeah.
I kind of think it would be better not to have focus breathing. It's only a prime lens. How hard can it be?
Yeah.
Very hard, apparently.
It is hard, and that is why cine lenses are so expensive, because everything's optically corrected, like distortion, fringings, breathings, all corrected, and optically, not relying on any post-production corrections in camera or software. It's all optically done mechanically in the lens. So that is something that is so rare and hard to achieve. Even with some of the most expensive photography lenses, they still breathe a lot.
Yeah, they do. There's something we never used to look for. It's like bokeh, isn't it? We never didn't even know what it was till somebody showed us. And now we got all worked up over it. But focus breathing's the same. But Linda says she has a G85. They can get quite complex, like any modern camera. She needs a book. Well, there was an earlier comment. I can't tell you who came up with it because I've lost all my comments because I dropped out. But I've been pondering the idea of a book called Make My Camera Simple. And it would be just that. How to get rid of or ignore or disable or get around all the stuff you don't need to just leave the things that actually make sense and are simple to understand. But it's not easier said than done. But That would be nice. Make my camera simple. That's what I call it. All I've got to do now is write it.
Maybe we should start a petition. Alfie will sign up. How many of you want a simple photography only camera? Very simple. Just a ISO diode, shutter speed, aperture, and that's it.
The thing is, I think that you can't just get rid of all the things in the menus.
No.
That are confusing. But what you can do is just come up with a list of pay attention to this, ignore that. And I think the list of things to focus on is what would be the core of the book. Yeah. And then just for a bit of fun, have a long list of things that don't matter, you should just ignore. And that might be helpful, I think.
I think when it comes to like camera designs, I think that they can keep the menu. They can have how many layers of menus within the system itself, but the physical design of the camera has to be very straightforward. Like you have an ISO dial at the top plate. You have the shutter speed, a dial, whatever, and then things that can be physically touch and turn on top of it, so it's easy to access straight away without having to dig into the menus and things like that.
Yeah. And I think this is one thing that appeals to me about all the cameras. I've got an old EOS 50D, which has its limitations to be sure, but it has buttons labeled for specific things. It's not customizable like a modern camera, but what it does is just very obvious.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes things simple. Time's going on, but I've got a quick question for Chuck L. He points out quite rightly that focus breathing compensation comes with a crop. Now, I've got a technical question I should ask Sony. If you've got a Sony A7S III or an FX3 or a ZV-E1 that has this 12 megapixel sensor, that is 4K native resolution. If you use active stabilization, that brings a crop. If you use focus breathing, that brings a crop. Do you get less than 4K footage, or does the camera upsample it back to 4K? Because if you've got a 4K timeline in your editor, what you don't need is to try and shoehorn in footage that isn't quite 4K. So I need to ask somebody who knows. But that interests me.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if they're taking the lazy way out, if you know what I mean.
There's an AI crop as well, so that can't give you 4K. You're going to end up with like 3.5K, which is going to make life interesting when you do your editing.
It would be, but then again, unless people are editing from an 8K screen or a 4K screen, you probably won't notice it. And even when you play back, there is a little bit of a compression going once you export the video anyway. So it's going to be less obvious than you may think.
I guess what I'm thinking is, if you use a program like iMovie, that will set the resolution of your timeline according to the first clip you import.
Oh, really? I haven't used iMovie for a long time, so I don't know.
You can't fix that later. I think if you're using something like DaVinci Resolve, then your timeline resolution is chosen as part of the project, and then it conforms all your content to fit it. But if you're in iMovie and you add something that isn't 4K, then you haven't got a 4K timeline anymore.
Right. Yeah. Final Cut is exactly like that as well.
Right.
You set the project and the frame the resolution, and everything just goes within it.
Yeah. So Chuck thinks it's 4K on the output. Well, if it is, Sony must be doing some upsampling. Next time I get a chance to speak to a Sony technical person, I will ask them.
Yeah.
And see, because that would bother me if I use these cameras. But things like AI subject tracking is clever, but there's a crop. Active stabilization is better, but there's a crop. Focus breathing compensation, good, but there's a crop.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, with digital, there are a lot of manipulations they can do, right, in camera.
Yeah.
And you know, one very famously using crop is probably Apple. Apple, I don't know any of you are Apple users, but you know the term center stage. I don't know if you are familiar with that term.
Oh yeah,
center stage.
That's the kind of webcam software, isn't it? Yeah.
So basically, it's a higher resolution camera, and it crops the image in, so it looks like it's following you around. You're putting you in the center of the frame while you're moving left and right. It's almost like there's a cameraman moving the camera for you, but in fact, it's just the camera cropping around the entire frame, moving with you in the center to pretend to be a moving camera, but it isn't. It's just a much bigger internal frame. It's just by moving the frame around it. Cheeky. Yep. But then again, a lot of digital stabilization is the same thing too. You know, like there's a heavy crop.
Yeah. I can't quite figure out how focus breathing compensation will work, because the focus breathing, it affects your subject and the background differently. So if you're just rescaling the image, I can't see how that would fix it. Because when I was testing this lens, my subject was the same. No, how did that work? So if it's going to have to rescale your subject as well as the background. I don't know.
It's mainly just the frame. So what they need to do is to crop it in a little bit, and then just gradually brought it backward. And
but it looked to me as if the background was breathing more than the foreground. But it's hard to see how these things work. Yeah. For sure.
But breathing effect can be corrected in post, but just more work.
No,
like you said, it actually may not look as natural as the actual proper stuff.
Or you just put up with the focus breathing. I don't know.
Right. I think I'm going to answer one last comment, and then we're going to have to call it.
Yeah.
And, it's been quite fun today, actually. More fun than I thought originally.
Random. But fun.
Right. Robert Mills actually say something here. Imagine if a Fable Pen F2. Oh, you're starting the Pen F2 again. You're opening a can of worm here. Of course, it will happen. Meets these criteria: no video, thrills, a photographer's camera, digital, analog. I think from an OM systems point of view, a Pen F2 would be the savior for what we just said.
The Pen F is not overburdened with video features as it is, so I wouldn't say they really get in the way in the same way that they do with hybrid cameras. But it is.
But then again, the Pen F wasn't actually designed as a hybrid camera. They just throw in video features as like an afterthought.
Well, just imagine then if they get rid of that altogether.
Yeah.
And borrow Panasonic's 25 megapixel MFT sensor, you could have a Pen F3 stills camera with 25 million pixels made for photography.
Made for photography. Hybrid AF. Ooh, that would be nice.
Olympus wouldn't have to do much R&D, really. I mean, the sensor and the processor, that could involve some work. But even if they stuck with the old sensor, heaven forbid, or maybe the sensor from the OM1, put that in.
They don't even need it. EM1 Mark III sensors was perfectly fine. You know, like that's got hybrid AF. They can stick with the old menu system. They don't even have to reinvent anything.
Well, just take all the video stuff off the menus.
Yeah.
Take off the setting on the mode dial. You don't need the record button. It's still there, but people won't know, and they'll be happy.
Quite frankly, the video features on the EM1 Mark III was an afterthought anyway. So like, it probably throw the same guts into Pen F2. That would suffice. I think that would be all right.
I think so. Yeah, but I'm just looking at the Pen F2. You could take the video setting off the mode dial, and then get rid of the record button, and then just have no mention of video anywhere. Nobody'd be any the wiser. And then you stick another $500 on, saying it's like a mini Leica.
Just a fun fact, actually. Don't know any of you actually know. If you turn on the video mode in a Pen F, there is a standard definition video recording option.
Really?
For those into this nostalgia, like 4:3 format, you know, like the old TV format. and the Pen F actually gives you that.
Will it do interlaced video as well?
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. But
shame.
it does give you some quirky thing over there. I'm telling you. Well, on that note, I guess that's the end of our today's chat, and that's been
Yeah, Jimmy, I didn't get to talk
fun.
about tripods.
Oh gosh, yes.
Next time.
We're gonna have a full chat about tripods, shall we?
I just get the feeling that nobody's behind this, so it might not happen.
Okay, one last question: how many of you use tripods? Raise your hands. How many use tripods? Or anyone still care about tripod these days? Since now we have all IBIS and every camera these days.
Because you haven't got the right tripod. That's why.
You haven't got the most beautiful tripod.
They don't have to be beautiful, but yeah.
I have a very beautiful tripod.
You have.
I
Was
have.
it Jitso or something of that sort?
No, Falcon, which I'm supposed to review it. So you're gonna see you're gonna see the video at some point. I think it's the most beautiful tripod ever made.
Is it? Is that going to be your headline?
That's my opinion. That's my opinion.
Wow.
It may not be the best, but it's certainly most beautiful.
This I need to see.
Yeah. Well, I want to see your tripod now, since you've been raving about it for a while.
Well, I haven't run out of time. You're not going to see my Unilock 1600.
Well, quite a few people use tripods still. Look.
Good.
John Allen has. I have no tripod. Well, then you should get one.
John, I've got 20, so if you want one, drop me a line.
Right. Okay, guys. Thank you very much for joining us, and it's been super fun today. Talk about random photography stuff, ranting or not. It's certainly quite a fun thing. If you want us to do that again, please like this chat, and also leave us some comment about things that you may want us to talk about. And remember, you guys are all in as well, so we want you to participate and to talk about things that may make you happy, things that annoys you. We're quite happy to discuss that, because we have a lot to say about things as well, whether it's good or bad.
I don't know if anyone's noticed that, but yeah.
One thing we did properly forget to talk about, Rod, is PhotoLab.
PhotoLab 8. Yes. Well.
Do we have time? For PhotoLab?
Yeah. How long have we got? 90 seconds?
I'll give you whatever time you need, mate.
All right, PhotoLab 8. If anyone wants to know what's new, I can tell them. I can also tell you whether I think it's important. So one thing that's new is D Prime XD2S, which is a little bit better than the previous one, but you'd have to look closely to see it. Depends on the photo, but still no support for X-Trans sensors yet for D Prime XD2. One of the annoyances about D Prime is that you can't see it real time on the image while you work, but now there's a large preview window which is almost instantaneous, so you can just scroll around and look at different parts of the picture and see what D Prime will do.
So that's live now.
Yep.
Okay.
Not the whole image, just a big preview window you can drag around.
Yeah.
Curves panel, much better. It's got a histogram behind it now. There's a gadget you can drag up and down to manipulate tones directly. And there's luma curves, not just RGB. So you can adjust the curve without changing saturation.
Right.
Which is kind of quite cool. I think that might be it. But I think the overwhelming thing about PhotoLab is that when you see what it can do with less than perfect cameras or lenses, it makes everything else look a bit sick. And I think it's particularly relevant. Well, it does. And I think it's particularly relevant for smaller formats like APS-C and particularly Micro Four Thirds. Because if you put your MFT RAW files through PhotoLab, I promise you, if all you've used before is Lightroom, if you look at them in PhotoLab, you'll think, my gosh, I had no idea this camera could be this good, this sharp, and this clean. So that's what PhotoLab does. So I think PhotoLab 8, not massively new, but it's a piece of software. It's got to be worth a look for anyone. Yeah. And 30-day free trial.
go and give it a try because
where's the harm?
I think that PhotoLab has a certain appeal to a lot of technical photographer who likes editing.
It is quite technical, yeah.
But also it does incorporate the pure raw technology, which is actually the raw AI reduction that is very
noise
much
reduction.
Every crop sensor photographer use these days, almost like a default thing that they use for pure raw.
I just finished a review where I used a sample image I shot at Yeovilton Fleet Museum using the Olympus 14 to 42 millimeter pancake zoom, so not Olympus's best lens, wide open at f3.5 at ISO 6400, and the quality is spectacular. And I'm not saying it's spectacular in absolute sense. I'm not saying it's spectacular in a kind of hyperbolic, oh well, it's a little better, but I'm going to call it spectacular. It actually is spectacular. So Chuck L wants to know, Chuck, if you go on Digital Camera World, you'll see in the review section, you'll see PhotoLab 8 there. I posted it a couple of days ago. That's where most of my reviews go. But yeah, I'm not impressed by the massive changes because they're not massive, but the baseline image quality from PhotoLab and DxO's processing is quite special, really. If you're that kind of person who likes to get into the detail to that degree.
Well, remember, and you can read Rod's reviews in Digital Camera World, and I think just Google Digital Camera World, that would just pop up, and just click on it. You should see the reviews. Quite a few is written by Rod, and that is why I said Rod is the encyclopedia here.
Trouble is they're getting longer. They're about the length of an encyclopedia. That's the trouble. I think this one's about 2,500 words. It's ridiculous. It's about twice as long as it should have been. I can't complain about DP reviews being too long, can I, if I'm going to do that? Hey ho.
Hey ho, hey ho. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for a 90 seconds introduction to PhotoLab 8. That's certainly very insightful. But if anyone wants to know more about PhotoLab 8, Rod did a review in Digital Camera World. You're very welcome to go and check it out.
It's just digitalcameraworld.com. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. So that's good. So I guess that concludes today's chat. And thank you very much for joining. I see a lot of likes already, so thank you for your support.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that is very good. And remember to tune in next time. And if you have any ideas or anything that you may want us to cover and to talk about, please do remember to leave us a comment after this chat room is finished, and the comment section below. So we'll pick it up and we can gonna form a new chat for the forthcoming episodes. So thank you very much. Until next time, I guess we will see you all very, very soon. Bye for now.
Bye.